Professor of Constitutional Law and Government at Columbia University and Assistant Counsel to the Governor of the State of New York.
Bob Shadler, live and work in Washington, D.C., working on a book with the Hopkins Professor on the Little Tigers of East Asia and Senior Fellow at the American Foreign Policy Council.
I'm Andrew Murphy. I'm a professor of political science at Rutgers University, New Jersey, but in the fall of 2019, I'll be a professor of political science at VCU in Richmond.
I went to law school in Virginia, so I must get some credit for that.
He didn't mention
I didn't mention the afterthought. I know. So we're here on Unit 1. It's going to be question number 2.
They haven't introduced
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We got tied up.
We got tied up.
Virginia.
Please go ahead, yes.
Good morning. We're Unit 1 from Douglas Freeman High School in Richmond, Virginia. My name is Zoe Kennard.
I'm Jonathan Holmes.
My name is Catherine Nelly. This is our teacher, Mr. Rob Peck, and we're looking forward to our conversation with you today.
Well, now you know what it's about. So there we go, right? It's going to be on question number 2. Our system of government is based on both natural rights philosophy and classical republicanism. Which philosophy, if any, has predominated American political thought, and what have been the benefits and costs of this predominance? What examples of contemporary issues can you describe that reflect the tension between classical Republican ideas and those of natural rights philosophy? And what position would you take on which of the philosophies, if either, should prevail? Explain what principles and values underline your position. You may begin.
The ideology of America constantly shifts between favoring either natural rights or classical Republican philosophy. Both were influential at the founding, and the Constitution was drafted to create both a republic of virtue and a nation that protected the natural rights of the people. However, natural rights theory has dominated American political thought, particularly in the modern era. While the continual growth of government is distinctly classical Republican, America has always prided itself on individualistic culture and the idea of limited government. In the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson justified separation from England with natural rights theory, and Article 6's Supremacy Clause was written to limit the tyranny of state representatives. Since these formative years, natural rights philosophy has created both beneficial and detrimental outcomes, such as with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which trusted that given the agency, individuals and businesses would invest their wealth in the economy and thereby improve the community. However, while jobs were created and wages increased, companies used the tax cuts to increase their own wealth through stock buybacks. In addition, the Supreme Court's protection of some natural rights has come at the cost of infringing upon others. While the court has protected natural rights, like in Tinker v. Des Moines, it has also used the same philosophy to make unjust decisions, like in Dred Scott v. Sanford. The freedom and liberty viewed as essential to American government have been protected for some at the expense of others, and often at the expense of the entire country's well-being.
At the root of many contemporary issues is the continued conflict between classically Republican and natural rights ideals. Behind arguments of budgeting, taxation, and policy lay questions of whether to focus on the rights of individual citizens or communal prosperity. The tension between businesses and society that began during the Industrial Revolution continues to permeate America's political conscience, and over time the government has fluctuated between rights-based and community-based solutions. In the early 20th century, the court used the laissez-faire system to protect the free market rights of businesses at the expense of workers in cases like Lochner v. New York. But in the 1970s, the Environmental Protection Agency placed regulations on businesses to protect the entire nation's environmental well-being. In addition, the ongoing strife between Democrats and Republicans over budgeting reflects a fundamental difference in philosophies. Democrats lean more classically Republican and seek to increase spending for resource conservation, healthcare, and education. Republicans, who tend towards natural rights philosophy, believe in individual responsibility and the invisible hand of the market to create wealth and prosperity. At the root of most political issues is a tension around how to best create a virtuous community.
Although natural rights philosophy has historically prevailed in America, the decreasing sense of civic responsibility in recent times calls for the reinvigoration of classically Republican ideals. America is riddled with divides, and it is therefore necessary to promote civic dispositions that guarantee empathy and unity, holding communal well-being as the ultimate goal. For society to thrive, some individual liberties must be sacrificed or diminished. Classically Republican ideals, however, have never been purely absent from America. The founders were influenced by Aristotle, who suggested that the city-state should exist with an end goal of flourishing, promoted by the unity of its citizens. The preamble sets an ideal vision of America as a unit, with its proclamation that government be instituted in order to form a more perfect union. Although natural rights theory decrees that the well-being of a country requires the protection of individual rights, America's rampant individualism and isolationism will only fracture society beyond repair. By protecting communal good, individual protections are ensured. If more people were educated to understand voting as a civic duty, perhaps our voter turnout would not hover around 50%. The founders were correct to believe that a prosperous society needed to be founded in both classical Republican and natural rights philosophy. However, when a community as a whole is uplifted through classical ideals, individuals are uplifted as well. Thank you.
Where do you find natural rights philosophy within the text of the Constitution? If anywhere.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's hard to dictate exactly what natural rights philosophy is in the case of what the natural rights are. So the thing is, we don't know what the natural rights are, right? In a Platonic sense, they exist outside of the cave, and you can't delineate exactly what they are. But in the body of the Constitution, you can see the formation of the social contract with Article 3 and Amendment 6 and 7 with the trial by jury. So you have the requirement to serve on a jury as part of that social contract, but it's also that ideal of the natural rights theory of limited government, because that's the people's check on the judicial
So
branch.
jury service would be a natural right, or is, keep going.
Sure. So the thing about jury service is that it incorporates both classical Republican and natural rights ideals. One of the big tenets of natural rights philosophy is that of a limited government. So the consent of the governed falls into that, right? Because by providing jury duty, that's the people's check on the judicial branch. And so that's the way that it is natural rights.
In addition, the Bill of Rights is simply the most natural rights thing that we have in the body of the Constitution. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. The founders, specifically the Anti-Federalists, include these specifically because they didn't want the government to infringe upon our natural rights, and rather thought that, the body of the Constitution, the Articles, creates our government. The Bill of Rights preserves the people's ability to function.
What about the
within that.
Ninth Amendment?
Sure. So the Ninth Amendment has been used to protect the privacy of Americans. So through cases like Griswold v. Connecticut, it's ensuring that the people are allowed to exist outside of that body of government, and they have the sphere that the government should not enter into, and that's a natural rights ideal, that by the government not stepping in and infringing on those rights, your natural rights are protected.
I'm looking at, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
However, it's sometimes necessary for the government to step into that personal sphere in order to better keep the community safe. We saw a lot of acts passed after 9/11, like the Patriot Act, that gave the government a lot of power to be able to interfere in somebody's personal life in order for public safety to be put at the forefront.
I'm looking at your Virginia motto here, right, on the Sic Semper Tyrannis. Is that a natural rights or a classical Republican slogan, or what's that got to do with anything we're talking about now?
Well, you could look at Sic Semper Tyrannis as both natural rights and classical Republican. The reasons that the Virginians chose it as our motto is that we were so influenced by the overreach of the British monarchy that we need to preserve our own individual rights, our own rights to be free from government overreach. However, Sic Semper Tyrannis does create a bit of a community ideal. So, and it's more classical Republican in that idea is that we as a community will not let tyrants take control of us, not let them violate our rights. So as a community, we establish this as our motto.
You could say that our motto can be found within the bed of the Constitution, as Sic Semper Tyrannis means thus always the tyrants. And within the Constitution gives the people the right to overthrow the government if they believe that it is unjust or it is violating their rights.
That's the social contract that's unspoken in the Constitution, but that's more delineated in the Declaration of Independence. But it's flawed to think that self-government and that idea of avoiding tyranny means that there shouldn't be any community values.
Elaborate natural rights with these four words in some kind of tension or discussion. Natural rights, are they opposed or connected to artificial rights? We talk about nature and natural and artificial. We also talk about discovering things that have always existed. Columbus discovered North America, or the Americas. He didn't invent them. But Charles Edison invented a light bulb that didn't exist before. So natural rights, have they always existed? And do we just discover them once in a while? And do we keep discovering new ones and other new ones and yet new ones? Or do we invent them when we need them?
Well, that's the thing, is that we don't know what the natural rights are. And we can say that we discover them, we can say that that the pursuit of happiness is a natural right, but we don't know what it is. And so the difficulty is that perhaps we shouldn't be focusing solely on natural rights, but being aware of the positive law and how that is playing into protecting those rights that we do espouse to be natural. And that's ultimately what the expansion of our rights and the additional amendments have been about. That's what the incorporation of the 14th Amendment through the incorporation of the Bill of Rights through the due process clause of the 14th Amendment has been about, is expanding those in accordance, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, with natural law.
But so we've only expanded the Constitution like a couple times, right? We don't amend the Constitution very often. So that's the only way that we can expand those is through amending the Constitution?
Of course not. I mean, it's not just at the national level, and that's where that coordination with that's where the idea of federalism comes in, because it doesn't, those expansion of rights doesn't just happen at the national level. I mean, ballot measures, referendums, and recalls were initiated at the state levels. The women got the right to vote at the state level first before it became an amendment.
And even with that, even though it's hard to amend the Constitution and expand those amendments, the 14th Amendment really created so much ground, some people will call it a second Bill of Rights, in order for us to define our new natural rights and see the limits that exist or do not exist and expand that. That's what Brown v. Board, education is a natural right, right? So it's changing as history progresses and as a society what we define are our core ideals.
You can look at cases such as Oberfeld v. Hodges and Lawrence v. Texas, and these are rights that are beginning to become more defined in our society. The founders knew that society would change over time, so that's why they allowed the amendment process, and then a judicial review was established, was so that society could adapt with the changing thoughts and morals of the people.
How do you all feel? Are you breathing? I didn't hear yes, breathing good. That because you're gonna pass out. Okay. How do you feel you did? That's the best part about being judged. You can ask all the questions, right? I thought you all did very well, very, very well. I can tell you that I know from my own experience that if I'm throwing out the 9th Amendment, that a group is doing well. Because that's probably my favorite curveball of all, whether it is a group of students or a group of federal judges. Because the 9th Amendment is this funny thing from actually Virginia, if you look at the history of where the 9th Amendment comes from. I love how we got into a discussion of the state seal. I cannot even believe this. I actually will use the Virginia seal and the New York seal in my classrooms, because though your seal's stepping on a person, our seal's stepping on the crown, the monarchy, the crown of the monarchy. It's this incredible comparison students find. I thought that you worked together very, very, very well. I liked the answers. I liked how you pushed back, but you listened. Like, that's a very unique skill. You listened to the questions. We were jumping in. You could tell that we were excited to jump in. You listened, you thought, you answered. I liked the way that you all worked together. I thought that was very, very well done. You obviously know a lot about this topic and this issue. Did you choose Unit 1?
It chose us.
Very few people choose Unit 1.
Well, you know, so we're the only 3 people that choose Unit 1. I love that, right? Let me just say one last thing. As much as Unit 1 seems to have chosen you, if you understand these things, and I'm assuming that all 3 of you are junior, senior, about to go to college, right? This answers all the other questions. And as much as I have a lot of love for all the other units, Unit 1 is the foundation. If you can begin to understand where classical republicanism, natural rights philosophy, where do you find that in the text of the Constitution, where do you not find that in the text of the Constitution, all the other pieces of the puzzle begin to come together. You are all obviously very well prepared because you were much better than a lot of my my college students that I have at school. So I was very impressed. Good job.
Thank you.
I would echo that. I won't repeat it, but I'll just echo it. It's a nice job. It's a tricky sort of thing to navigate. As you indicated, there are shifts. You can focus on one way. In a way, kind of made the argument that we're inventing nature, or we invent natural rights. be interesting to explore that further. I was trying to find a way to bring in Douglas Freeman and see how he would have thought and what you thought of him and how he would have answered this question, but I couldn't figure out how to do it, so I didn't do it. But a very nice job.
Great. This is great. I can't wait to start teaching Virginians in Intro to Political Theory next fall. This is going to be great fun. The Sic Semper Tyrannis thing, we have our questions that we sort of roll out. But I was just sitting here, I thought, oh, I think I'll throw them down and just see what, and that's a sign of how well you were doing, because it's like, well, I wonder what they're going to say. I don't even know what the answer was when I threw it, and you nailed the question. It was fantastic. And I loved how you said, of course not to him.
Yeah.
I mean, we've worked together for several years now, and he likes to lob the questions one way. He doesn't always get them lobbed back.
But I appreciate that.
Yes,
that
right,
shows
exactly.
that you know what you're talking about.
Exactly, and that
Right.
shows that we're really having a back and
Yeah.
forth. And then we look over and time is up and we think, oh, geez. So really, really well done. Nice job.
Very well done.